The summer heat bore down on the Nevada desert like a furnace that refused to quit, and Beatrice Norton wondered if she would ever feel cool again as she trudged the long, dusty path from the creek back to her family's homestead just outside Tonopah. The wooden buckets hanging from the yoke across her shoulders grew heavier with each step, sloshing precious water onto her already damp dress. Her father had been ill for 3 weeks now, and the responsibility of keeping their small farm running had fallen squarely on her 22-year-old shoulders. The well near their cabin had run dry 2 months ago, forcing her to make this twice-daily journey to the creek that still held water, though it too was shrinking in the relentless drought of 1887. Beatrice paused to catch her breath, pushing a strand of honey-colored hair from her forehead with the back of her hand. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by scattered sagebrush and the occasional Joshua tree standing sentinel against the pale sky. She had been making this walk for weeks, and each time it seemed to grow longer, the path more treacherous, her energy more depleted. She was about to continue when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching from the west. Her hand instinctively moved to the small knife she kept tucked in her belt. A woman alone in this territory had to be cautious, though most folks around Tonopah were decent enough. Still, you never knew when drifters or troublemakers might wander through. The rider came into view, and she relaxed slightly. She recognized the horse first, a magnificent roan gelding that belonged to one of the bigger spreads north of town. The man atop it sat with the easy grace of someone born to the saddle, his wide-brimmed hat shading his face from the punishing sun. As he drew closer, she could make out more details: broad shoulders, a dark vest over a chambray shirt, and the telltale dust of a working cowboy covering his clothes. "Afternoon," he called out as he approached, slowing his horse to a walk. "That looks like hard work in this heat." Beatrice straightened her shoulders, pride warring with exhaustion. "I manage just fine, thank you." The cowboy brought his horse to a stop a respectful distance away and pushed his hat back, revealing a face that was both rugged and handsome, weathered by sun and wind but still young, probably no more than 25 or so. His eyes were a striking green, unusual and arresting against his tanned skin. "Name's Kieran Parker," he said. "I work at the Double J Ranch. Been noticing you making this trek pretty regular. That's a long walk for water." "Beatrice Norton," she replied, unable to completely hide the weariness in her voice. "Our well ran dry. The creek is the closest water source." Kieran's expression turned thoughtful, and he glanced in the direction she had been heading. "My well is closer. Use mine." The offer caught her off guard. "I couldn't impose." "It's not an imposition," he said, and there was a genuine kindness in his voice that made her throat tighten unexpectedly. "I pass right by your place on my way to and from the Double J. The well at my cabin is good and deep, never runs dry even in drought years like this. It's about half the distance you're walking now." Beatrice studied him carefully, trying to gauge his intentions. She had learned to be wary of overly generous offers, especially from men she barely knew. But there was something straightforward and honest in his gaze, no hidden agenda in his expression. "Why would you do that?" she asked directly. "You don't know me." "Because it's the right thing to do," Kieran said simply. "And because I know your father is sick. Doc Thompson mentioned it when I was in town last week. Nobody should have to carry water that far twice a day while taking care of a sick parent." The mention of her father softened something in her chest. "The talk of the town are we, small town," Kieran said with a slight smile. "Everybody knows everybody's business, but that means people care too. My cabin is just over that rise to the north, maybe 20 minutes from your place. You're walking near an hour each way to the creek, aren't you? She couldn't deny it. The journey was exhausting, and it ate up so much of her day that other necessary tasks were falling behind. The garden needed weeding, the chickens needed tending, and her father required constant care. She was running herself ragged trying to keep everything going. "I appreciate the offer," she said slowly, "but I don't want charity." "Not charity," Kieran assured her. "Consider it being neighborly. Though if it makes you feel better, you could pay me back in trade. I hear you make the best preserves in the county." "I'd gladly take a few jars in exchange for well water." Despite herself, Beatrice felt a small smile tug at her lips. "You've heard about my preserves. Mrs. Henderson at the general store won't stop talking about them. Says she's never tasted better peach preserves in her life." "Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Parker." "It's just the truth, Miss Norton. So what do you say? Let me help you out." Beatrice looked down at her buckets, then back toward the direction of the creek, then finally at Kieran's open, honest face. Her back ached, her shoulders were raw from the yoke, and she was so tired she could barely see straight. Pride was one thing, but foolishness was another. "All right," she agreed. "I accept your offer, and please call me Beatrice." "Beatrice," he repeated, and somehow her name sounded different in his voice, softer and warmer. "I'm Kieran. Now, why don't you let me take those buckets for you today? I'll show you where my cabin is, and tomorrow you can come by whenever you need water." She wanted to protest, but he was already dismounting with fluid grace, crossing to her side before she could object. He lifted the yoke from her shoulders as if it weighed nothing, and she nearly gasped at the sudden relief. She hadn't realized how much pain she had been carrying until it was gone. "Thank you," she said quietly. "No need for thanks," Kieran replied, securing the buckets to his saddle. "Come on, I'll walk with you. It's not far." They fell into step together, Kieran leading his horse by the reins. The silence between them was surprisingly comfortable, neither feeling the need to fill it with meaningless chatter. Beatrice found herself stealing glances at him, noting the confident way he moved, the gentle hand he had with his horse, the calluses on his hands that spoke of hard work and honest labor. "How long have you been at the Double J?" she asked eventually. "About 3 years now. Came out from Kansas looking for work and got lucky. The Johnsons are good people to work for, fair and decent. They've given me a small cabin on the edge of their property, let me run a few head of cattle of my own. I'm saving up to buy my own place someday." "That's a good dream," Beatrice said. "Land of your own." "What about you?" Kieran asked. "Have you always lived in Nevada, born and raised?" "My mother passed when I was 16, and it's been just me and my father ever since. We've been working this homestead for as long as I can remember. It's not much, but it's ours." "That counts for a lot," Kieran said. "Owning your own land, having something that belongs to you, that's worth fighting for." They crested a small rise, and a cabin came into view, nestled against a rocky outcropping that provided shade during the hottest part of the day. It was modest but well-maintained, with a neat corral and a small barn. And there, just to the side of the cabin, was the well, its stone rim looking solid and permanent. "Here we are," Kieran announced. "Home sweet home." He led her to the well and began drawing up water, filling her buckets with easy, practiced movements. The water that came up was clear and cold, and Beatrice couldn't help but trail her fingers through it, marveling at the difference from the increasingly murky creek water she had been hauling. "This is wonderful," she said. "Your well really is good." "Dug it myself when I first got the cabin," Kieran said with evident pride. "Hit a good aquifer about 30 feet down. Should be reliable for decades to come." He finished filling both buckets and secured them to his saddle again. "Now, let's get you and this water home. Your father is probably wondering where you are." The walk to Beatrice's homestead took less than half an hour, and she marveled at the difference. Kieran had been right. His well was so much closer than the creek. When they arrived at her modest cabin, Kieran insisted on carrying the water inside for her, setting the buckets down in her kitchen with careful attention. Her father called out from the bedroom, his voice weak but alert. "Beatrice, is that you?" "Yes, Papa," she called back. "I'll be right there." She turned to Kieran. "Would you like to come in? I could offer you some water or coffee." He shook his head. "I need to get back to the ranch, but I'll expect to see you tomorrow when you need more water. Morning or evening, whenever suits you best. I'm usually around." "Thank you, Kieran," she said, and meant it with her whole heart. "This kindness means more than you know." He tipped his hat to her, a gesture that seemed both old-fashioned and charming. "It's my pleasure, Beatrice, truly." She watched him ride away, something unfamiliar and warm stirring in her chest. It had been a long time since anyone outside of her father had shown her such uncomplicated kindness. In a harsh land where everyone was struggling to survive, small acts of generosity stood out like stars in the desert night. The next morning, Beatrice woke before dawn as usual, tended to her father, fed the chickens, and then headed out with her buckets and yoke. The walk to Kieran's cabin felt almost easy compared to the trek to the creek. The sun was just beginning to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold as she approached his property. She found him already up and working, repairing a section of fence near the corral. He looked up at her approach and smiled, setting down his tools. "Morning," he called. "You're up early." "Farm life," she replied. "The work doesn't wait. Isn't that the truth?" He walked with her to the well and helped her draw water, their conversation flowing easily as they worked. She learned that he had grown up on a farm in Kansas, that he loved working with horses, that he had a younger sister back east who was training to be a teacher. "What about you?" he asked. "Did you ever want to do anything besides farming?" Beatrice considered the question as she secured her buckets. "I used to dream about opening a shop in town, selling my preserves and baked goods. But that was before Mama died, before Papa got sick. Now I'm just focused on keeping us afloat." "Those dreams don't have to die," Kieran said gently. "Sometimes they just have to wait their turn." She looked at him, surprised by his thoughtfulness. "That's a nice way to think about it. Life is long, Beatrice. There's time for many chapters." She left with her water, and his words warm in her heart. And when she returned that evening for more, he was waiting with fresh bread he had bought in town, insisting she take it because he had bought too much, and it would just go to waste. She knew he was making excuses, offering help in ways that wouldn't bruise her pride, and she appreciated him all the more for it. The days fell into a pattern. Morning and evening, Beatrice would walk to Kieran's cabin for water. Sometimes he was there, sometimes he was out working on the range, but even when he was gone, he always left the well accessible for her. On the days when he was home, they would talk, sharing stories and pieces of their lives, slowly building a friendship that felt both natural and precious. 3 weeks into this arrangement, Beatrice brought him a jar of her peach preserves as promised. Kieran opened it immediately, dipped a spoon in, and tasted with the seriousness of a professional judge. "Mrs. Henderson was right," he declared. "These are the best preserves I've ever had." "You've got a real gift, Beatrice." She felt her cheeks warm with pleasure. "It's my mother's recipe. She taught me everything about preserving fruit. We used to make dozens of jars every summer and sell them in town." "You should do that again," Kieran said. "Once your father is better, I mean. People would line up for these." "Maybe," she said, but the dream felt less impossible when he talked about it, as if his belief could somehow make it real. As summer deepened into August, something shifted between them, subtle but undeniable. Beatrice found herself looking forward to the walks to his cabin with an eagerness that had nothing to do with water. She would catch herself thinking about things she wanted to tell him, stories she wanted to share, questions she wanted to ask. And from the way his face lit up when he saw her approaching, from the way he always seemed to have time to talk no matter how busy he was, she suspected he felt the same. One evening, she arrived to find him grooming his horse, and he invited her to sit with him while he worked. They talked as the sun set, painting the desert in impossible colors, and when he walked her partway home, their hands brushed together and neither pulled away. That accidental touch seemed to kindle something between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing quietly all summer. "Beatrice," he said as they paused at the boundary of his property. "I hope this isn't too forward, but I've come to treasure our conversations. You're the best part of my day," her heart hammered in her chest. "You're the best part of mine, too." He smiled, a genuine expression of joy that transformed his entire face. "Then maybe when your father is feeling better, you'd let me take you to dinner in town, properly, I mean, as more than just neighbors." "I'd like that very much," she said softly. "Though I have to warn you, I don't know when Papa will be well enough for me to leave him for an evening." "I can wait," Kieran assured her. "However long it takes." But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The very next morning, Beatrice's father took a turn for the worse. She sent word to town for Doc Thompson, who came out and examined the older man with a grave expression. "He needs constant care," the doctor told her privately, "and medications that I can provide, but they're expensive. I'm sorry, Beatrice, your father is very ill." She wanted to cry, but she had no time for tears. Instead, she threw herself into caring for her father, administering the medicines the doctor left, sitting with him through long nights when fever made him delirious, somehow finding the energy to keep up with all the other work that needed doing. Kieran noticed her absence immediately. When she didn't come for water that first day, he rode to her homestead and found her exhausted and overwhelmed. Without asking permission, he filled her water buckets from the barrel he had brought on a wagon, chopped a week's worth of firewood, and repaired a broken section of her chicken coop. "You don't have to do all this," Beatrice protested weakly. "I know I don't have to," Kieran said. "I want to." "Let me help you, Beatrice. You can't do everything alone." She was too tired to argue and too grateful to refuse. Over the following weeks, Kieran became a regular presence at her homestead. He would come by before dawn to handle the heavy chores, bring supplies from town, and sit with her father when she needed to sleep. He never made her feel like she owed him anything, never asked for more than she could give, but his presence was a lifeline she clung to gratefully. Late one night, as they sat together on her porch after her father had finally fallen into peaceful sleep, Beatrice felt tears start to slide down her cheeks. She tried to hide them, but Kieran saw. "Hey," he said gently, moving closer. "It's all right. You're allowed to be scared." "I can't lose him," she whispered. "He's all I have left." "You have me," Kieran said, and then seemed surprised by his own boldness. "I mean, I know we haven't known each other that long, but I care about you, Beatrice, deeply. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone." She turned to him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, the genuine affection in his expression. "Why are you so good to me?" "Because I'm falling in love with you," he said simply. "I think I have been since the first day I saw you carrying those buckets, so determined and strong and trying so hard to do everything yourself. You're remarkable, Beatrice Norton, and I consider it a privilege to know you." Her breath caught in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like that, with such honest emotion and vulnerability. "Kieran, you don't have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I know you have enough to worry about right now. I just wanted you to know that you matter to me, that whatever you need, I'm here." but she shook her head. You didn't let me finish. I was going to say that I'm falling in love with you too. These past months, you've been my strength when I had none left. You've shown me kindness when I didn't know how to ask for it. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I thank God every day that you rode up that afternoon and offered me your well. Kieran reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently cupped her face in his work-roughened hand. Can I kiss you? Yes, she breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and sweet and full of promise. The kiss was brief but profound, a seal on the feelings they had been dancing around for months. When they pulled apart, Beatrice felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Her father's condition stabilized over the next few weeks, the crisis passing as the medications and constant care did their work. He was still weak, still needed help, but the immediate danger had passed. Doc Thompson declared himself cautiously optimistic, and for the first time in months, Beatrice allowed herself to breathe a little easier. Kieran continued to visit daily, and their relationship deepened in those quiet moments stolen between chores and caretaking. He would hold her hand as they sat on the porch, steal kisses when they had a moment of privacy, and talk with her about the future in a way that always included both of them. One September evening, after her father had been awake and alert enough to eat a full meal and even crack a few jokes, Kieran asked if he could speak with the older man privately. Beatrice's heart leaped, both excited and nervous about what that might mean. She waited outside, pacing the porch until Kieran emerged with a smile on his face. Her father called her in, and she found him looking more alive than he had in months. "That young man wants to marry you," he said without preamble. "I told him yes, but only if it's what you want. Is it, B? Do you love him?" "Yes, Papa," she said, kneeling by his bedside. "I love him very much, but I won't leave you alone. I can't." Her father reached out and patted her hand. "Kieran already thought of that. He wants to move here, combine our properties, help run the homestead. Says he can still work at the Double J while building up our own herd. He's a good man, daughter, the kind your mother would have approved of." Tears spilled down Beatrice's cheeks, but these were tears of joy. "He really said all that, and more. He loves you, B. It's written all over his face. Don't let this chance slip away because you're afraid. Your mother wouldn't want you to sacrifice your happiness for me." She hugged her father carefully, mindful of his fragile health, and then went back outside to where Kieran waited, nervous hope in his eyes. "He told you?" Kieran asked. "He told me. And yes, Kieran Parker. Yes, I'll marry you." His whoop of joy probably echoed across half the county as he swept her into his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing with pure happiness. When he set her down, he kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring all his love and devotion into that single gesture. "I'll be a good husband to you," he promised. "I'll work hard, take care of you and your father, build a good life for us." "I know you will," she said. "You've already proven what kind of man you are." They were married in October, in a simple ceremony in Tanapa's small church with her father in attendance, looking frail but happy in his wheelchair that Doc Thompson had arranged. Kieran's boss from the Double J came, as did many of the townspeople who had known Beatrice all her life. Mrs. Henderson from the general store cried through the entire ceremony, declaring it the most romantic thing she had ever witnessed. "Started with water from a well," she told everyone who would listen. "Isn't that just the most beautiful thing? He offered her his well, and now he's offering her his whole life." After the wedding, Kieran moved his modest possessions to Beatrice's homestead, and they began the work of building their life together. True to his word, he continued working at the Double J while also improving their own property. He built a new well closer to the cabin, expanded the garden, and started a small herd of cattle on their combined land. Beatrice's father continued to improve slowly, eventually regaining enough strength to sit outside and watch them work, offering advice and encouragement. Having Kieran, there lifted an enormous burden from Beatrice's shoulders, and she found herself with time to return to the things she loved. She started making preserves again, and Kieran built her a small workshop where she could work on her recipes. The first winter of their marriage was hard, as all Nevada winters were, but they faced it together. On the coldest nights, they would sit by the fire, Beatrice working on her sewing while Kieran carved small wooden figures that he sold in town. They would talk about their dreams, their plans, their hopes for the future. "I want children," Beatrice said one night, "lots of them filling this house with noise and laughter." "I want that too," Kieran agreed, "a whole house full. Sons and daughters who can take over this land when we're old and gray." "Not too old and gray," she teased. "We're still young yet." He pulled her close. "Young enough to start working on those children whenever you're ready." She blushed but smiled. "I'm ready." By spring, Beatrice was expecting their first child. The pregnancy was not easy in the harsh desert climate, but Kieran was attentive and supportive, taking over all her heavy chores and making sure she rested. Her father, now strong enough to walk with a cane, delighted in the news that he would be a grandfather. "A new generation," he said with satisfaction. "Your mother would have loved this." Their son was born on a warm day in early September, a year after their wedding. They named him Thomas, after Beatrice's father, and the old man wept with joy when they told him. The baby was healthy and strong, with his father's green eyes and his mother's honey-colored hair. Kieran proved to be a devoted father, staying up with Beatrice during late-night feedings, walking the floor with Thomas when he was fussy, and staring at his son with an expression of absolute wonder. "I can't believe he's ours," he would say, touching the baby's tiny fingers with gentle reverence. "We made this perfect little person." Life settled into a new rhythm, busier now with a baby but full of joy. Beatrice started selling her preserves in town again, and they became so popular that she could barely keep up with demand. Kieran's cattle business grew steadily, and they were able to save money, building toward the future they had dreamed of. When Thomas was 18 months old, Beatrice discovered she was expecting again. This time, she gave birth to twin daughters, much to everyone's surprise and delight. They named them Rose and Ruby, and suddenly their small cabin felt very full indeed. "We need to build an addition," Kieran said, looking around at their crowded home. "These babies need more space." So he and some hired hands built 2 new rooms onto the cabin, giving them a proper bedroom and a nursery for the children. Beatrice's father, now in his 70s but still sharp as a tack, helped design the addition, his years of experience proving invaluable. The years passed in a blur of happy chaos. Thomas grew into a sturdy, curious boy who followed his father everywhere, learning about ranching and cattle. The twins were mischievous and clever, always getting into something but sweet-natured and loving. Beatrice's preserves business expanded until she had to hire help, and she taught several young women in town her mother's recipes, passing on the tradition. Kieran eventually saved enough to buy out his share of the Double J operation and focus full-time on their own ranch, which they had named the Norton Parker Ranch, combining both their families. Under his management, it grew from a small homestead into a respected operation, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. When Thomas was 10, Rose and Ruby 8, Beatrice gave birth to another son whom they named William. 2 years later, their last child arrived, another daughter they called Margaret. Their cabin, despite the additions, was bursting at the seams, and their dinner table was always loud and chaotic. "This is what I always wanted," Beatrice said one evening as she and Kieran watched their children play in the yard while the sun set over the desert. A house full of love and laughter. "It all started with water from a well," Kieran said, pulling her close. "Best decision I ever made, offering it to you." "Best decision I ever made was accepting," she replied, leaning into his embrace. When Beatrice's father passed peacefully in his sleep at age 78, they mourned him deeply, but took comfort in knowing he had lived to see his grandchildren and to witness the success of the ranch. He had been happy in his final years, surrounded by family, and that was all anyone could ask for. The children grew and thrived. Thomas proved to have his father's natural way with horses and his mother's business sense, becoming an invaluable partner in running the ranch. Rose developed her mother's talent for cooking and preserving, taking over much of that business as Beatrice grew older. Ruby surprised everyone by developing a talent for training horses, earning respect throughout the county for her skill. William loved working with the cattle, and little Margaret, the baby of the family, showed signs of being a gifted artist, filling the house with her drawings and paintings. As the years passed and their children grew into adults, Kieran and Beatrice found themselves entering a new phase of life. Thomas married a sweet schoolteacher named Emily and started his own family, building a home on the far edge of their property. Rose married a rancher from a neighboring spread, while Ruby shocked everyone by marrying a horse trader from California who respected her skills and treated her as an equal partner. William stayed on the home ranch, working side by side with his aging father, eventually marrying a girl from town who had always been sweet on him. Margaret went away to San Francisco to study art, but she came home every summer, unable to stay away from the desert she loved. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Kieran took Beatrice back to the place where they had first met, that dusty stretch of road between the creek and town. They were older now, with silver threading their hair and lines etched by sun and laughter on their faces, but their love had only deepened with time. "You remember?" Kieran asked, taking her hand. "You were struggling with those buckets, so determined to do everything yourself." "And you offered me your well," Beatrice said, smiling at the memory. "I thought you were just being kind. I didn't know you were offering me everything." "I fell in love with you that day," Kieran confessed. "Watching you fight so hard, so brave and stubborn and beautiful. I knew right then that I wanted to spend my life making yours easier, happier, better." "You've done that and so much more," Beatrice said, tears gathering in her eyes. "You gave me everything I ever dreamed of and things I didn't even know to dream about. A partnership, a true love, a family, a life full of meaning and joy." He kissed her then, as sweet and tender as their first kiss on her porch all those years ago. "Here's to another 25 years, and more," she agreed. "As many as God grants us." They were blessed with more years together, watching their grandchildren arrive and grow, seeing the ranch continue to prosper under the next generation's care. They never forgot those early days, though, when a simple offer of well water had led to a lifetime of love. On summer evenings, they would sit on their porch, now weathered but sturdy, and watch the sun set over the land they had built together. Their original well, the one where they had first drawn water together as friends and then as something more, still stood beside Kieran's old cabin, which they had converted into a guest house for visiting family. Sometimes Beatrice would walk out there, running her hand along the sun-warmed stones, remembering how tired and hopeless she had felt that day when Kieran had appeared on horseback. She had thought he was just offering water, but he had offered so much more: companionship, support, love, and a future she could never have built alone. When Kieran was 70 and Beatrice 67. They celebrated their golden wedding anniversary with all their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren in attendance. The party lasted 3 days, with food and music and dancing, and everyone marveled at how the couple still looked at each other with the same love and devotion they had shown as newlyweds. "What's the secret?" Thomas asked his father as they stood watching Beatrice dance with one of the grandchildren. "To making a marriage last 50 years and still being so happy," Kieran thought about it, then smiled. "Kindness," he said. "Starting each day choosing to be kind to each other. Remembering that you're partners, that you're on the same team, and never forgetting why you fell in love in the first place. That's it. That's it. Though it also helps to marry someone as remarkable as your mother. I got lucky that day she needed water." "We all got lucky that day," Thomas said, gesturing to the crowd of family gathered in celebration. "None of us would be here without that moment." As the party wound down and the last guests departed, Kieran and Beatrice found themselves alone on their porch once more, a place that had witnessed so much of their life together. The desert stretched out before them, vast and eternal, the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. "Tired?" Kieran asked, taking her hand. "A little," she admitted, "but it's a good tired. That was a wonderful celebration." "You're wonderful," he said, lifting her hand to his lips. "Every day with you has been a gift, even the hard days, especially the hard days. That's when I learned what you were really made of, how strong and brave and incredible you are. I thought I was helping you by offering my well, but you're the one who saved me, Beatrice. Before I met you, I was just drifting, working toward a dream that didn't have any real shape or meaning. You gave me purpose, a reason to work hard and build something lasting." She leaned her head on his shoulder, comfortable in a way that only decades of companionship could bring. "We saved each other." They sat in peaceful silence, watching the stars emerge one by one, much like they had watched their family grow and flourish over the years. The desert air was cooling now that the sun had set, carrying the scent of sage and creosote, familiar and comforting. In the distance, they could see lights in the windows of Thomas's house, where he and Emily were putting their children to bed. Somewhere out in California, Rose was doing the same, while Ruby was probably in her barn checking on a mare about to foal. William and his wife lived just up the road, close enough that they could see the glow of their windows too. Only Margaret was far away in San Francisco, but she had promised to visit again soon. "We built a good life," Beatrice said softly. "A good family." "We did," Kieran agreed. "And it all started with you carrying water from the creek." She laughed, a sound that still made his heart lift even after 50 years. "And you offering me something better." "Always," he promised. "I'll always offer you something better as long as I have breath in my body." "I know." "You've proven that every day for 50 years. As the years continued to pass, they settled into the gentle rhythm of old age together. Kieran's joints grew stiff with arthritis, but Beatrice would rub salve into them every night, her hands still gentle and sure. Her eyesight began to fail, but Kieran read to her every evening, his voice steady and comforting. They took care of each other the way they always had, with tenderness and patience and unfailing love. The ranch continued to thrive under William's management, with Thomas still active in the business despite his own advancing age. The grandchildren were growing up, some of them starting to have children of their own, and the family legacy continued to expand and flourish. When Kieran was 75, he fell ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. Beatrice nursed him with the same fierce determination she had shown caring for her father all those years ago, refusing to let him go without a fight. He recovered, though he was weaker afterward, and they both knew that their time was growing shorter. But they didn't waste it in fear or sadness. Instead, they treasured each day, each moment together. They told stories to their great-grandchildren, passing down the history of the family and the ranch. They sat in the sun and remembered their youth. They held hands and spoke of their love, making sure nothing was left unsaid. "If I go first," Kieran said one day, "don't grieve too long. You've always been so strong, so capable. Live the rest of your life fully, Beatrice. Promise me." "Don't talk like that," she said, tears in her eyes. "Promise me," he insisted. "I want to know that you'll be all right." "Only if you promise me the same," she countered. "If I go first, you keep living. Keep enjoying this beautiful family we made. Don't just give up." "I promise," he said. "Though I don't know how I'd manage without you. You've been my entire world for more than 50 years. And you've been mine. But we've raised strong children who will take care of whichever of us is left. We don't have to worry about being alone." As it happened, they didn't have to face that separation for several more years. They made it to their 55th anniversary, then their 56th. Kieran was 78 and Beatrice 75 when they finally began to truly slow down, spending most of their days on the porch they loved, watching the life they had built continue to flourish around them. One warm spring evening, after a day filled with visiting grandchildren and the laughter of little ones playing in the yard, they sat together as the sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The desert was blooming after winter rains, and the air was sweet with the scent of wildflowers. "It's beautiful," Beatrice murmured, her hand clasped in Kieran's. "You're beautiful," he replied, looking at her with the same love he had always shown. "Thank you for saying yes that day. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for offering me your well," she said. "For seeing someone who needed help and choosing to care. You changed everything for me, Kieran. You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams." "We gave each other that," he corrected gently. "That's what marriage is, Beatrice. Two people choosing each other every day, building something together that neither could have built alone." She smiled, closing her eyes as she leaned against him. "I'd choose you again in every lifetime. And I'd choose you," he promised, "always and forever." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, as they had done countless times over their long life together. Around them, the ranch settled into evening quiet, the cattle bedding down, the horses nickering softly in their corral, the night birds beginning their songs. Inside the house, William's wife was cleaning up from dinner. Down the road, Thomas was reading to his youngest grandchild. Across the country, their other children were living their own lives, carrying forward the lessons and love they had learned in this house. The legacy of that simple offer of water had spread far and wide, touching more lives than either Kieran or Beatrice could have imagined. As Beatrice drifted off to sleep in her chair, her hand still held securely in Kieran's, she dreamed of that dusty road where they had first met. She saw herself as a young woman, struggling with those heavy buckets, tired and scared and trying so hard to be strong. And she saw him riding up, a handsome cowboy with kind eyes and an offer that would change her life forever. In her dream, she heard his words again. "My well is closer. Use mine." And she understood, after a lifetime together, the full meaning of that offer. He hadn't just been offering water. He had been offering his home, his heart, his future. He had been offering to share his life, to lighten her burdens, to walk beside her through whatever came. That simple act of kindness had been the foundation of everything they had built together. When she woke, the stars were bright overhead and Kieran was dozing beside her, his breathing deep and even. She squeezed his hand gently, and he stirred, opening his eyes to smile at her. "Must have dozed off," he said. "Should we head in?" "Not yet," she said. "Let's stay here a little longer, it's such a beautiful night." So they stayed, two old people who had loved each other well for more than half a century, watching the stars wheel overhead and listening to the sounds of the desert night. They had built something lasting, something good, something that would continue long after they were gone. And it had all started with water from a well, and a cowboy who chose kindness over indifference, who saw someone in need and offered what he had. In doing so, he had found not just someone to share his well with, but someone to share his entire life with. As the night deepened and the temperature dropped, they finally went inside, supporting each other the way they always had, two people moving as one after so many years together. They made their way to bed, helped each other with the nightly routines that had become second nature, and lay down together under quilts that Beatrice had made decades ago. "Good night, my love," Kieran whispered, kissing her forehead. "Good night," she replied, nestling close to his warmth. "I love you. I love you too, now and forever." They fell asleep in each other's arms as they had done for 56 years, peaceful and content in the knowledge that they had lived well, loved deeply, and built something beautiful together. Outside, the desert stretched vast and eternal under the stars, and on their ranch, their family slept safely, all of them branches of a tree that had grown from a single seed of kindness planted on a dusty road long ago. The Norton Parker Ranch would continue for generations to come, passed down through children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, each one carrying forward the story of how it all began. And they would tell their children, as they had been told, about the summer day when a young woman was carrying water from the creek, and a cowboy said his well was closer, and offered her something far more valuable than water. He had offered her love and partnership and a future bright with possibility, and she had been brave enough to accept. It was a legacy worth remembering, a story worth telling, a love worth celebrating. And in the end, isn't that what all of us hope for? To find someone who offers us their well, their home, their heart, and to be wise enough to say yes when that offer is genuine and true. Kieran and Beatrice had found that, and they had built a lifetime on it. Their story became the foundation of their family's history, a reminder that kindness matters, that small gestures can change lives, and that love, when tended carefully and cherished deeply, can last forever. As the years continued to pass and their story was told and retold, it never lost its power to move people, to inspire them to their own acts of kindness, their own leaps of faith. Because at its heart, it was a simple story about simple people who chose love over loneliness, connection over isolation, generosity over selfishness. And that, perhaps, was the greatest legacy of all, not just the ranch they built or the children they raised, but the reminder that we all have wells to offer, kindness to share, and the power to change someone's life if we're willing to see their need and meet it with an open heart. The story of Kieran and Beatrice, which began with water from a well on a hot summer day in 1887, became a testament to the enduring power of love, the importance of kindness, and the beautiful truth that sometimes the best things in life start with a simple offer of help from a stranger who becomes so much more. Their love story, born in the harsh beauty of the Nevada desert, nurtured through hardship and joy, and brought to fruition through decades of devotion and partnership, stood as proof that true love is not just about passion or romance, but about showing up every day, offering what you have, and building something together that neither person could have built alone. And somewhere in Tonopah, Nevada, there is still a well, worn by time but still standing, a silent witness to the love story it helped begin, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary things start with the most ordinary acts of human kindness.